Hello and welcome to Appendix 1, Favourite Number 1, who I also call Sue. This is a woman who I met in November 2007, who went on to become my first favourite after getting divorced. So the purpose of this chapter is to give Western women a good example of the sort of woman a man like me appreciates and likes. Women are not devoid of responsibility in the area of who they are being so as to make themselves an attractive option to a man. It is not enough just to turn up and be female, though this is what you've been told all your lives. In my online postings, I have often referred to a woman that I have called Sue 1, Fave Number 1, Sue 1, that kind of thing. For the purpose of this chapter, let us call her Sue 1. We met in November 2007 for a brief 5-minute chat. We met again in March 2008, by complete accident. We went on to be great friends and become very close in 2010. We split in October 2010. I protect her name and identity because I'm well aware that the Australian Intelligence and Security Organisation, ASIO, also known as the Australian CIA, they are kind of the Australian CIA, would like to do her harm. That is the sort of person Michael Toll, my ex-brother-in-law, is. He would like to harm a woman to get back at me for exposing his sister for her crimes and terrible character, rather than hold his sister accountable for her actions. In this chapter, I'm going to talk a little about Sue 1 and also reproduce the comments that she agreed I could publish in the next chapter. Her comments have had more than 1,500 views. I also put a video out about her comments, and I will redo those comments into this audio book because I'm adding ads into the book. The name of Sue 1 seems to be a good name for women where I want to keep their identity safe from those who would do them harm. So this appendix is going to be about meeting this Sue 1 and me talking about this is what a woman can be like. When I talk about my experiences with Sue 1, many Western women are very hateful. They say things like, "This woman does not exist. She is a figment of Joshua's imagination." Or, "Sue 1 is a gold-digging whore who only wants Joshua for his money and his passport." Or, "Sue is crazy to ever be spending time with a woman-hater like Joshua." There's a lot of comments that women make. Indeed, when I was telling Sue 1 that I was commonly called a woman hater, she didn't believe me until I actually showed her comments to that effect online. She was like, "But you don't hate women, you rather like women." So she didn't believe me. It is amazing to me that Western women are so hateful of another woman that they do not even know, merely because she and I get along so well. Indeed, I have praised Sue 1 so much online that a Russian woman friend of mine who was 11 years younger than Sue 1 wrote to me and told me that she thought I was praising her too much. Mind you, there is a spirit of competition between Russian women and Ukrainian women, which is where Sue 1 comes from. So here is the story of my Sue 1 for any Western women who would like to read or listen to my comments about her, and my assertion that if Western women behave more like my Sue 1, then they would be much more likely to be great wives and find good husbands. That's my assertion. So, meeting Sue 1. Sometimes in life you just have some good luck. If you live long enough, then there must be sometimes the luck runs your way, right? In November 2007, and I think it was late 2007, I was in one of my regular eating places, just minding my own business, when the woman who would become Sue 1 walked into the restaurant. Just a short note, in Germany the normal bars also sell quite good food, so when I say restaurant, the place we met was what in the West would be called a bar, but the food is quite good and economical, and this is a quite normal place for people to meet and eat. It is not like in Anglo-Western countries at all. A bar in Germany is very much nicer place to eat in than a bar in the Anglo world. So, to return to the story. This woman walks into the bar, which would be very much more closely described as a restaurant in the Anglo world, and I spot her. She is, without a word of a lie, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen with my own eyes. She would rival the most airbrushed of supermodels. Since I was alone, I decided to get up and walk over to her and tell her that she simply was the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. And she is, and was. Just amazing. I do this and she laughs at me and tells me that she gets a lot of pick-up lines from men because of her beauty. And she's expecting me to hit on her. And I say to her, no, I'm not here to do anything more than to tell you that you are an amazingly beautiful woman. And she says, really? It is okay. I'm used to men approaching me and talking to me for what they want. And I said, well, you know, I'm divorced and I've just started a relationship with a woman who is from Australia, where I come from, and I'm only looking for a woman from my own background. And looking at you, you're not from my background. I didn't know where she was from at the time. So I really am not looking for anything other than to tell you, you are amazingly beautiful. And I just have never seen a woman like you in my whole life. And I just wanted to say so. So she has now decided to believe me. And she says words to the effect of, you are actually serious? You just want to tell me I'm beautiful? Nothing more? And I said, yes, doesn't this happen to you often? And she laughs and says, you know that all men only have one thing on their mind, and I get a lot of men talking to me because of how I look, and that is nice. I guess one day that too will pass. But no, I've never had a man compliment me on my beauty and then say he has no interest in me at all. That is new to me. And so we laughed over this whole small incident, and we went about our separate ways. I had indeed recently started talking with a woman who lived in Australia who had a character that seemed to hold a lot of promise. We had talked a few times on the phone, and we were of very like minds. This woman that I had met this day was not a possible candidate for Wife 2.0 because she was from the Ukraine and not from a culture close to what I would understand. We laughed and went our separate ways, and that was November 2007. Chapter 2, Re-meeting Sue 1. Sometimes fate deals us a very strange hand. The woman from Australia and I hit it off like a house on fire, as we say in Australia. For reasons that I will not publish, we have very similar ideas about relationships and how they work. We progressed rapidly. I wanted to spend some time in Australia to recover my health and visit my ill mama, so I decided to spend time in Australia for 6 weeks from January, February, March in 2008. I planned to spend some time with this prospective wife 2.0. In this period, I get to know her. In this period, I would get to know her face to face, rather than on calls and Skype, etc., as we had done to date. The short story is that we hit off very well, but as soon as we made plans to move forward, she started treating me poorly, and most disconcertingly, she started treating me like Jennifer. She even used some of the same phrases as Jennifer. This was a very big red flag to me. I was very concerned as to how it could possibly be that two women who grew up in different cities, were 10 years apart in age, could possibly actually use the same phrases and talk down to me. That was a big surprise. I left Australia and returned to Europe with the question in my mind, what is this woman thinking? I'm not about to go through that sort of relationship again. This was March 2008, some 5 months since I'd first met Sue 1. I recall I got back to Germany on Sunday the 9th, March 2008. As luck would have it, I was at a favourite eatery the next Saturday, which was the 15th of March. I looked up the dates to verify for this book. The next thing I know, this woman who I call Sue 1 drops herself down at my table. She has spotted me eating alone and decided she will say hello. I was amazed. I was amazed that she saw me and recognised me and then bothered to come and say hello. She tells me that it is not every day an older man tells her that he's not really interested in her, and she's interested in me. So who am I really? She asks after the woman in Australia that I had told her about in the previous November. I take note that she has a very good memory. Okay, I'd met her for 5 minutes. I mentioned I'd started talking to another woman. 5 months later, she remembers that. She has a good memory. So I tell her, it's very strange. I've been out to Australia to spend time with her, and she's perfect. I said, she's absolutely perfect. I know she would make a great wife if she wanted to, but there's something wrong. She treated me poorly, and she's acting like Jennifer. All domination and control. I do not want to go through that again, and I had enough of that in the last 14 years. She was very taken and very interested in what I was saying. Finally, I confessed to her that I had talked to a friend about my concerns and the issues with this new prospective wife 2.0. And he had said, why not try dating a Russian woman? There are plenty of them in Germany, and from all reports they are very good. She immediately pounced with, Ukrainian women are better than Russian women, to which my reply was, let me guess, you're Ukrainian, right? I did not know where she came from exactly until she confirmed that she was indeed from the Ukraine. I thought she was Russian at the first time I met her from her accent. She asked me straight out, would you ever consider a Ukrainian woman as a possible wife? Straight out, asked me just like that. And I told her that, as I told her in November previous, that I thought if I were to marry again, I would prefer to marry within my culture. But since I had found what I thought was the perfect woman in my culture, and that I had serious questions about her, that perhaps, if the right woman came along, I might consider marrying outside my cultural background. So my answer was a very soft, maybe, if the right woman came along. Well, I will never forget the next hour. It was like a job interview. It was hysterically funny. I openly laughed quite a few times at Sue One's approach to me. She wanted to know everything about me, but just over a few bites to eat in the eatery. She even asked me, would I consider having more children? I told her the way that I'd been treated, that more children was not something that I would ever do again. And she asked me, well, is it okay if I try and change your mind? And I told her, I've been very clear to you. I do not believe I will ever want more children. If you want to try and change my mind, you are most welcome to try. I've told you my position and that I do not think I will change my mind. What you do with that is up to you, right? And so, almost like a business deal, right there on the 15th of March 2008, we did the deal. We would be friends and we would see how that worked out. Until I typed it just now, I never realised that it was the Ides of March that we re-met. Funny how these things work out. What I had not told Sue One was that I had decided to disown my former children, including my 2 stepchildren, and move on from there. I decided to start that process on April the 1st. I had also decided that on April the 1st I would call this prospective wife 2.0 in Australia and tell her that I felt she had some baggage that she had not yet dealt with, and we should take a step back while she dealt with her baggage. When I actually did that, she got all upset and yelled at me, and we never spoke again, which showed me that I did the right thing there. So starting April the 1st, 2008, I had cut the relationship with prospective wife 2.0, and I was going into the process of disowning my former children, whom I loved very much. Only one person knew I was disowning my former children, and he was supporting me through that process. Sue One had no idea what I was doing. She only knew that I was very quiet, and when we were together in April 2008. She was surprised at my disinterest with her because of the attention she typically receives from other men, but she was quiet and patient, and she was perfectly charming to me in these times. She would sit and talk to me, babbling away while I was silent, very much as my mother had done when I was a little boy, which is probably why I liked it. It was soothing as I was in this suicidal state. And with that, we will just take a short word from our sponsor. And welcome back. The next piece is the famous bread roll incident. In Germany, May Day parties are quite common. Sue One, who was no more than a casual friend at this stage, asked me if I wanted to go to a May Day party. By this stage, I was in the depths of being suicidal and told her no, I did not want to see her and I did not want to come to the party. After all, Who the hell wants a suicidal guy at their party, right? Talk about bring the mood down. Anyway, she persisted. She ran through all the reasons why I should come to the party she was talking about. In the end, I relented. She had no idea I was suicidal. She was shocked when I told her about this 18 months later. We went to the party. Now I need to explain that at parties like this, it is quite standard that the food is served as a buffet to keep the prices down. A buffet of food for a party is much less than table service in most eateries. So here I was suicidal, I was drinking heavily, and each night sitting on my 5th floor balcony in the cold, wondering if I should just take a long walk off my short balcony while drinking far too much alcohol and smoking too many cigarettes. And I was at this May Day party, totally regretting that I had allowed myself to be talked into coming. We went to collect our food from the buffet. When we came back to our table, Sue-Won put her plate down and her bread roll happened to roll off the plate onto the table. She picked up the bread roll, the wayward bread roll, and she waved it in front of my face. Then she proceeded to make the statement that would change my life very much for the better. She said, as near as I can remember, "Did you know that in the Ukraine, that if a bread roll falls to the ground and it is not spoiled for eating, that we say a small prayer to thank God that we can still eat the bread roll? Because some people in the Ukraine do not even have a bread roll to eat." And with that, she took a bite of the bread roll and ate her food. She was delightedly happy just to have a nice meal to eat. I will never forget the look of happiness on her face as she ate that mouthful of bread roll. I looked at her in that moment and I thought to myself, I would really like to have a woman like this in my life. And I immediately caught myself thinking a future thought. One of the hallmarks of being genuinely suicidal is that it is impossible to think ahead in time. In the time I was suicidal, I was almost run over in traffic a number of times because it was not possible to realise that I need to think ahead long enough to think about the oncoming traffic on the road I was about to cross. Truly, I nearly got run over a couple of times. Very few people know what it is like to be genuinely suicidal as opposed to being very depressed. When you are very depressed, you are still able to think that you might come out of the situation. You have a sense of self-preservation, a sense of future. When you are genuinely suicidal, there is no sense of future, not even 5 seconds into the future. It doesn't exist. It's a very strange place to inhabit, since we all think future thoughts, especially if we are going to walk across the road where there are cars travelling at high speed, right? That time I was genuinely suicidal, though only 4 weeks, was one of the most amazing times of my life in a million different ways, and none of them very good, by the way. So here I was, with the most beautiful woman I had ever laid eyes on in my life, at a May Day party, and I was having my first future thought in a month. I knew now that I was going to survive. I knew I was out of the woods. I looked at Sue-Won as she laughed and joked with other people at our table and ate her food. She was so happy just to have a good meal to eat. Over the following few years we laughed about this often and made a joke about time to feed Sue-Won. I had never seen a woman so happy just to have a meal to eat. So that was May Day 2008. We became fast friends over the next period. However, as I learned more about what governments were up to, I took it upon myself to oppose them, a very dangerous course of action. Getting to know Sue-Won. Sue wondered what was happening as we started out in quite promising fashion, and I had withdrawn and given no explanation. Like the true wonderful woman she is, she never asked for an explanation. She later revealed she knew better than to ask me what was going on. She later said, "I knew you were very upset about something, and I knew you would tell me when you felt the time was right." In 2008-09 we spent some time together, and she was wondering why it was that I was not stepping forward into the relationship that was possible. She held her tongue and waited for me to tell her what was happening. We spent some wonderful time together and enjoyed each other's company very much. There was more than just a spark. The relatedness was there, but I was holding back, and she could not figure out why I was holding back so much. Finally, in December 2009, it came time to me to confess what I was doing with respect to the criminality in the Australian and Irish governments to her. This was because in November 2009 I planned to travel to Australia and video record my family court meeting matter in an attempt to gather up the proof that the courts were a criminal cartel, which would also prove the criminality of the entire Australian government apparatus. If you are interested, you can watch that court meeting on YouTube on this link, and it's there. I told her pretty much everything about how I felt about her. I told her that I'd been suicidal in 2008 and that her support had helped me save my life. I told her about the famous bread roll incident. And I told her that I was going to Australia to video record this court meeting to try and gather evidence of the criminality of the courts. To say she was shocked is quite an understatement. She was very surprised. She suggested that since I had managed to survive being suicidal and get on with my life, it might not be a wise idea to try and expose the criminality in government. People who do that sometimes wind up dead. She noted it would be such a waste to survive being suicidal only to be killed by your government. Are you really sure you want to do this? I told her that I felt I had to do it for the children of my land as well as for all the other fathers who were being criminally victimised like myself. I told her that I fully expected to be jailed for a while and that, yes, I knew my life was in danger. I knew that if I was successful with my planned approach, there would be many who would want me dead. I pointed out how many Russian and Ukrainian men had died in the war so that she might live in freedom and not in German occupation. And I pointed out that sometimes it falls to certain men to fight to the death for the benefit of others, and this was, apparently, my fate. It now made complete sense to her why I was so reserved about moving forward in any relationship with her. I did not want to hurt her feelings being so close to her and then getting myself jailed or killed. So we enjoyed what we thought might very well be our last dinner together. A triumphant return, and Sue disses me. This was really funny. So obviously I was not jailed and I was not killed, and I returned to Germany December 2010 for Christmas and met with Sue for a Christmas celebration. I had just completed one of the greatest achievements of my life, recording the court meeting and navigating the situation in such a way that the magistrate in the case, David Dunkley, was forced to commit the crime of impersonating a public officer, and I had it on video. I was jubilant to be safe back in Germany. It was time for me to get back on with my life, having been more successful than I had imagined was possible in my wildest dreams. I looked forward to seeing Sue, knowing that my life was no longer at risk. I will point out to you, dear reader or listener, that at this time I was still a beater, provider, protector, loser, dumb, ignorant schmuck. And that's basically the way I view myself. I was a provider, beater, protector, loser, dumb, ignorant schmuck. I made the mistake of being very bitter towards Sue at that dinner. I told her that I knew my life was no longer in danger and that the video I had taken was widely dispersed and could never be suppressed. I told her that since I felt I was no longer in danger, I was interested in talking about what might be possible between us going forward. It was time to think about a possible future, seriously, and I could think of no one better than her to live the rest of my life with. Talk about a beta schmuck. Lots of men laugh at me that I was so beta as to do that with this woman. And Julie, just like Jennifer or Prospective Wife 2.0, it was like someone waved a magic wand over her. She suddenly started dissing me. She refused to return texts. She was suddenly too busy to spend time with me, even though I had to return to London for work shortly. I was very surprised at her actions over that Christmas period. In order to figure out how to deal with this sudden turn of events, I turned to a friend of mine who is Alpha. I could not figure out how it could possibly be that she had turned so suddenly. I was completely clueless about the true nature of women at this stage. After more than 30 years of trying to understand women so as to be able to better manage my relationships with them, I was still quite clueless, because all the women tell the same lies, so it sounds like the truth. My friend laughed at me and said words to me to the effect, "You are the dumbest genius I have ever met. You really don't know what's happening?" And I didn't. He said to me, "You are a beta, and women hate betas. She's testing you. She wants to see if you will step up to being alpha. If you want this woman in your life, you're going to have to be alpha. She will never be with you as a beta." So I asked his advice. How do I migrate up to alpha? And his answer was simple. You start acting like an alpha, and you'll get there pretty soon. Your starting point is to find another woman to date and make sure Sue 1 knows you are dating somebody else. You have no obligations to her, just as she has no obligations to you. When a woman tests an alpha, the first thing he does is demonstrate his ability to get another woman at will. When Sue 1 sees she has competition, she will compete. Right now, she sees that she has no competition, and she sees you as a weak, emasculated beta who has no clue about women, because that's exactly what you are. Ouch, eh? This was my friend. Ouch. And with that, we'll take another short break from our sponsor. And thank you again for returning in. Next piece is the story of stepping up to alpha, which was a little difficult for me because I decided to be a beta many years earlier in my life when I was an 11-year-old. This incident is not in this book, but I had decided to be more beta when I was 11. So stepping up to alpha. In this chapter, I will cut the story short and simply say that the woman who went on to become Sue 3 was the woman I selected to start dating. We had met at a May Day party in 2009, exactly 1 year after I had come out of being suicidal with Sue 1. Sue 1 was not available to go to that May Day party because she was running in a marathon that weekend. And as chance would have it, Sue 3 met this girl at a party. That's how that works. So Sue 3 and I also started dating. More on that in the chapter on her. I made it clear to Sue 1 that I was now also spending time with Sue 3 and that she was a really lovely woman. Sue 1 naturally tried on the "I am really upset" dog and pony show. And as a beta moving up to alpha on training wheels, I was still very beta when Sue 1 was throwing her tantrums. I was still really very beta. But more on that later. As a beta moving up to alpha on training wheels, it was very hard for me to do something that I knew would provoke and upset her. But my friend told me to stick to my guns. He reminded me that she had brought this on herself by dissing me, and that she had to be shown who was the alpha and who was the prize around here, which was me, not her. And it didn't take very long for the breakthrough to come, by the way, just about 4 weeks, actually, 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. The breakthrough came about in February. I had just a few weeks after Sue 3 and I kicked off our quite unusual relationship, and it was a very unusual relationship. I had arranged to spend the weekend with Sue 3, but the ticket I had from London available to me, I flew into the airport near Sue 1's place as I had bought it well in advance to get the discount price. So when I was picking up the rental car, I sent her a text and said, "It feels really strange to be here at the airport, just a few kilometres from you, and yet be going to spend the weekend with Sue 3. I wish you a good weekend." And I put a smiley face on the message, which is a very alpha thing to do, right? I feel strange that I'm right here. I've bought this ticket to come and see you, but I'm going to go see somebody else this weekend. Have a good weekend. I wish you well. And she flipped, as many betas would say, "Oh, you can't say that to a woman. She'll get really upset." And alphas say, "Of course you say that to a woman, because she'll get really upset." She flipped. Over the next 10 minutes, she sent me 3 or 4 texts, each nastier than the last. Her texts were laughable as she simply did not speak like that and could not bring off that she really meant what she was saying. It was just laughable. She told me she never wanted to see me again. So I replied that's perfectly okay by me because I really liked this Sue 3 and things were going very well between us, and less time with her would mean more time with Sue 3. And that was great. Thank you. Another smiley face. Of course, that just meant over the next few hours I got about 10 or 12 texts from her, each more angry and upset than the last. And I was texting back, I thought you never wanted to see me again. I thought you never wanted to talk to me again. So why do you keep texting me? Of course, she could not tell me the truth, so she kept calling me names. And I was with a friend of mine at the time, and I was showing him the text, and we were laughing our heads off as she got angrier and angrier on the text. One of the first lessons of an alpha is to ignore a woman's anger. They make it up to try and manipulate us. Eventually, I sent her a text to say, on Monday afternoon, this was Saturday afternoon, so I said, on Monday afternoon, I have to return the rental car. I will be just a few kilometres from you. I can be there about 3 p.m. Do you want to talk to me face to face? Of course, the answer was yes. She did want to meet me face to face. At that meeting, we went over the issues and concerns she had in a number of areas. I simply explained that since she had decided to act poorly towards me as a beta, that she had to be taught the lesson that she should have treated me better. I also told her that I understood she would never want to move forward with me while I was a beta, and I knew that she was testing me to see if I would move up to alpha. I told her that straight out. I told her straight out that I was going to move up to alpha, and we could see how that worked out. And magic wand time, she was immediately more civil. Immediately more civil. She was testing me, and she knew that I'd responded. This was exactly what she was looking for me to do, and so her plan was working, with the exception that she did not like me doing this by dating another woman. And I presume she now wanted to see how my move up to alpha worked out and whether that would be enough for us to strongly consider a future together. So Sue 1 decided that she wanted to compete with Sue 3 for a possible future with me. A possible future with me was something that she was offered with no competition in December 2009. She had rejected the possibility because I was still a beta loser schmuck. Now that I was willing to move up to alpha, Sue 1 was willing to compete with Sue 3 for a possible future with me as an alpha. That's all that had changed. This is how much women hate betas and love alphas. They will mercilessly diss betas while competing wholeheartedly for alphas, and they will do this even if it is the same man, just that he has changed his attitude a bit. I was quite bemused by all this. It made no sense to me other than the idea that women dislike betas. Indeed, it can be said hate betas, and that they want to bag an alpha. The old saying is, if you can't beat him, then join him. Comes to mind. So Sue 1 was very supportive of me moving up to alpha status. She was so supportive that she even decided to tell me a great deal about women and how they really worked to help me along. I learned more about women from Sue 1 in 2010 than I had in the previous 34 years of, quote, trying to figure out women. Sue 1 told me all the secrets of women and how they use their feminine wily ways to predate and snare a man. I was very surprised she would talk about these things so openly to me, since it was clear that we were now both very interested in the possibility of being together. I expected her to be much more dishonest and try all the tricks in her book to snare me. Many of these lessons are being repeated to the young men I talk to. Some of the most memorable lessons are in the books I have released to young men to read. I can honestly say that 2010 was the highlight of my life as far as relationships with women go. That is a sad thing to say when you consider I was with Jennifer for 23 years. Both Sue 1 and Sue 3 worked very hard to garner my attention, meaning possible future income. It was strange to me that Sue 3 was competing and jealous because our agreement right from the start was that our time together would only be temporary. She was far too young for me to take seriously, and even so, she was bitterly jealous. She was bitterly jealous of Sue One. I was amazed. The issue between Sue One and I was more children. She had one son and desperately wanted another baby before the biological clock ran out. If I had been treated better in divorce, I would have likely agreed to her having one or two more babies. But the idea of going through the loss of my children again, and there was no guarantee that I would not, turned me off more babies. We split in October 2010 and remained friends. Sue One was one of the best things to ever happen in my life. And if there were more Western women like her in the world would be a better place. As I noted, I have included this chapter so that you, dear reader or listener, can read or listen to a man praise the sort of woman he would like to marry and be with. If you are more like Sue One, then you are more likely to be able to marry a quality man like me and be happy in that marriage. And now I'm just going to repeat some words of wisdom from Sue One. In the book Living Free in the Feminazi World, I included some examples of words of wisdom from Sue One so that women might see these and learn from them. Most Western women actually attacked Sue One for saying these things. The issue is that a woman who is prepared to be honest and say things like this is very attractive to a man. Honesty is an attractive quality in a woman. No women ever say, I want a man who lies to me, but so many women see no issue in lying to their men. Do unto others. If you want your husband to be honest, then you have to be honest yourself. Here are some direct excerpts from Living Free in the Feminazi World. They are put here for your benefit, not so that you will attack and criticize this woman. Me. Tell me, if we were to be married, what would make you happy in marriage? Sue One. Peter, women do not know what makes them happy. A woman has to be told what she can have by a man and told to be happy about it. Then she will be happy. That's what she said, word for word. Can you imagine a Western feminist woman saying that? No, you can't. What she was telling me was that if I were to marry, the way to make her happy was as a child, to tell her what she can have and tell her to be happy about it. The level of personal happiness of Western women is plummeting, and this has been widely reported. This is why. Now, I love this one. This was the second time that she snapped at me, as in made an angry comment. She was very tired and a little out of sorts on the day. She had misunderstood something I said to her and reacted, for what was her, angrily. And I responded back, I have told you once before, and I did my best angry voice, I have told you once before, speaking angrily to me like that is totally unacceptable. I won't tolerate it. You have to apologize right now and never do that again. Literally, she laughed in my face. She laughed straight back in my face when I said that. And she said, Peter, do you think that is going to make me behave? No, it won't. A man has to put his woman in her place. When she is angry to him like that, he needs to stomp on her and put her down so that she will not try doing that again for a long, long time. And if he does not do that, she will fight him all day, every day. She will make his life miserable until he learns to put her in a place. Do you not know this? And I was stunned. I was just shocked when she said that. And I said, Sue One, I've told you, I grew up in a house with 3 boys. The only woman in the house was my mum. Tell me, how do you think it would have gone if I tried to stomp on my mother and put her in her place? And she looked at me with a deepening frown and concern and a very worried look. She just immediate cloud came over her face. And she said, I can see that you and I are going to fight a lot when we are married. That's what she said. So Sue One is a very strong-willed woman, which is both good and bad. She could see from my lack of experience at putting a woman in her place, as she called it, that it would cause a lot of problems between us. It would be something I would have to learn how to do. One of the events that really woke me up to this was as follows. I was talking with one of my lady friends, we shall also call her Sue on here, and she's wonderful, and at one time the question of being together or even possibly being married was discussed. The situation was that she wanted more babies and I did not, and this is a normal issue for men my age. We spent nearly a year with each of us persuading the other to our point of view. One conversation we had is worth you knowing about, young man. This is addressed to young men because it's from the Living Free book. Sue 1 said, "When we are married, if I change my mind and decide I want a baby, we can have a miracle baby." And she waved her hand when she said miracle baby. And I said, "Really? A miracle baby? What is that? I don't know what you mean by that." And she said, "That's where I go and get a baby from another man, and I tell you that it's your baby, and it's a miracle." And I looked at her and said, "Wow, that's really interesting, but don't you think I might be a little upset about that?" And she put this very serious look on her face and said, "Peter, if you do not want to pay for any baby a woman has, you must not marry her." And I was like, really? I've never heard that before. Do other women think like this? And she said, "Yes, all us women think like this, but I am honest." And she made a big play out of, you asked me to be honest, and I'm being honest. If I promise not to have another baby and I change my mind, I will get another baby whether you give it to me or not. And I was like, wow, she told me this to my face. That's really amazing. So I actually went on to check this statement with other Eastern European women I knew, about 5 or 6, I guess. And it turns out that all of them said pretty much the exact same thing. A woman will get a baby any way she pleases and try and pin it on a man to pay for it. Sometimes it is the husband, but often it is not. Another conversation I had with a different Eastern European woman went like this. She was a friend of a friend. I mean, we never dated. It was just a woman I knew. I mentioned in passing that my wife became accidentally pregnant when she was young. And this woman said, "You Western men are so stupid. No woman gets accidentally pregnant." And I said, "Really? Can you tell me more about that?" And she said, "Sure. We are women. We know what makes us pregnant. Okay? We know how to get pregnant. We know when we can get pregnant. So if we want to get pregnant, we know just exactly how and when to do it. And if we do not want to get pregnant, we know just exactly how to do that too. So no women get accidentally pregnant. You Western men are so dumb you will believe anything." And I had to admit, I really laughed at her calling me so dumb because in this respect, I clearly was. I also checked this comment out with a number of other women as well, and yep, they all told me pretty much the same thing, that in most cases, the accidental pregnancy was well and truly planned. So just a note to young men, the propaganda that 30% of pregnancies by Western women are unplanned or accidental is just that, propaganda. And that is what we're telling the young men. Both Sue 1 and Jennifer had a deliberate pregnancy when they were young that they both lied about and called accidental. Okay, both of them. Jennifer did this, Sue 1 did this. It's actually very common for a woman to get, quote, deliberately pregnant and call it accidental. So there you have it. These are quotes as closely as I can remember from Sue 1 as we were considering the whole idea of being closer together in 2010. I kept this very quiet at the time because I was aware that the various intelligence agencies knew where I lived and I did not want to get this woman into any difficulty. She competed very hard for me during the year and tried very hard to change my mind to more babies, but I was adamant at the time. I did not want more children, and this was an obstacle that we were not able to overcome. We remained friends in as much as any woman can be a friend of a man. So, thank you very much for listening to my chapter about this Sue 1. She just a fabulous woman, really very, very much helped me through my period of being suicidal. She laughs at the notion that I could possibly hate all women given the time that we had together, as does Sue 3. So I just wanted to put this in here and say, if Western women want to start slowing down the damage to relationships, and perhaps in a few years actually being nice enough to repair the damage to this disaster area called relationships, you could do a lot worse than take some advice from this woman. You could do a lot worse than that. Okay, so thank you very much for listening.